Cheaters of Reddit. How did your affair start and end? Story 1. I was the mistress in a marriage. The guy was an old boyfriend from high school. We dated off and on. When we were off, he would date this girl, Kelly, and when we broke up for the final time, he went and married her. Almost a year after we broke up, I was back in town on summer break from college and ran into him at my summer job. He gave me this sob story about how Kelly wanted a divorce and was taking his kid from him. I stupidly believed him. We exchanged numbers, started talking daily. He invited me over to his apartment, showed me his divorce paperwork, and ultimately things got sexual for a couple weeks. One day, I swung by to pick up a pair of earrings I'd forgotten the day before. His best friend from high school answered the door. I asked if Guy was around. Best friend said no, why would he? Turned out Guy was actually house sitting for best friend. It wasn't his apartment. Best friend also informed me that Guy and Kelly were in the process of buying a house. Their marriage was fine. I was livid and disgusted. I went to work the following day and in walks Kelly. I ask her what she's doing later that night and if she's available to talk. We meet up after I get off and I lay it all out for her. She teared up a bit, but ultimately she was pissed. She gives me their address and tells me to show up there unannounced the next day. I do, and Guy is white as a sheet trying to get me to leave. Kelly shows up and they end up in a screaming match. So Guy ended up getting divorced and settled with a chunk of child support because Kelly informed the right people about Guy's pot plants. None of us talk anymore. When I think about it, I have to shower at least twice. Story 2. I was in a 5 years relationship with my girlfriend at the time. I started to talk to an old coworker from my teens that I always had a thing for, but she lived a couple states away, so I knew nothing would come of it. Well, it turns out that she still had family in my area and regularly visited. We made plans to get some dinner and catch up for old time's sake. It ended in both of us getting drunk, renting a hotel room, and having some fun. This happened a few times over the next several months until I get a text from her. It's a picture of a sonogram of our child. I was going to come clean to my girlfriend because I never had a father growing up and I didn't want to put my child through that. However, she ended up losing it a month or so into the pregnancy, and we stopped talking. It left me feeling very guilty and anxiety-stricken. I would never do that again. I never told my girlfriend. We broke up a few months later for unrelated problems in the relationship. I also didn't get with the coworker. I have a healthy relationship now and I love my girlfriend. I'll never repeat this mistake. Story 3. A few years ago, I met this amazing guy. Let's call him Guy. Fell very much in love with him. He was so kind and sweet. We kissed a few times and hooked up once, but he was starting to see this other girl, so it never went further than that. I was pretty heartbroken over it. Fast forward a few years. I'm a year and a half into this horrible relationship. We'll call him Shithead. Shithead is a compulsive liar. He yells at me, threatens to break up every time I do something he doesn't like. Like whenever I had a panic attack. I'm at a concert without Shithead and I look across the dance floor and I see Guy. He was dancing his heart out, laughing and just being amazing. I hadn't seen him since the time we hooked up, which was a few years ago. My heart skipped a beat. I approached him. We talked for hours and I told him I was living with a really shitty guy and that I wanted out. When he kissed me goodbye, I just knew. I continued the relationship with my head for about a week while still seeing the other guy on the side before I finally worked up the courage to break up with him. I've been with Guy ever since and haven't looked back once. Story number 4. My ex-husband and I weren't even sleeping in the same room when I met my affair. My ex just wasn't interested in sex, and it was causing so many fights because I was so unsatisfied. I met my affair on World of Warcraft. And we knew each other for about a year and had never flirted or anything like that. One day, I found out that he had settlers of Cayton and mozzarella sticks and lived an hour and a half away. I hopped in the car and drove down and we hit it off really well. He didn't know I was married at the time and I really needed to get laid. It had been about 6 months at least. The affair never ended. Or I guess it officially ended when my divorce was finalized. He and I are married now and have been together for 6 years. Story number 5. I'm a gay guy and I was seeing someone. Nothing crazy serious, but headed that direction. He was at a college pretty far away, but was from my area. I started talking to a second guy I had a class with who I was pretty attracted to. We start talking. Turns out the second guy has been seeing the first guy for the last year or so too. And they actually got arrested together fairly recently. The second guy and I got along really well and started seeing each other. The second guy stopped seeing the first guy, but I was still talking to him. It all ended when the first guy was in town and came over one night and saw a sext from the second guy show up on my phone that was sitting on the table. He didn't know we knew each other, and he definitely didn't know we were hooking up. He wasn't happy, and we broke up. Second guy and I had a short summer affair and realized neither of us wanted a relationship. We're now best friends, and there's nobody I trust more in the world. I moved across the county and we still talk all the time and go to music festivals together. First guy occasionally snaps me flaccid pics, so not sure what that's about. I've never really got around to asking. Story number 6. I had a long-distance boyfriend in high school. We had been online friends for years, and in the middle of grade 12, finally admitted that we liked each other. He was a total sweetheart and was one of the first people who just treated me like they respected me and loved me. So I was ecstatic when he moved to my town for university. Within a month of his arrival, I was realizing we should have never become romantic partners, but was too attached to know what to do about it. He was still a total sweetheart, but he basically treated me like a friend he had sex with instead of a girlfriend. Plus, he was one of those guys that had a lot of female friends, most of whom had crushes on him, and he was assiduously conscientious of everyone's feelings. So he didn't want to make anyone upset or jealous. So he didn't touch me in public, despite talking at length about how he was going to marry me and our future kids. On top of that, the sex was awful and horribly painful. But every time I tried to gently teach him or otherwise imply that he wasn't giving me orgasms, every time he would start sobbing and beg me for forgiveness that he couldn't please me. 18-year-old me had no idea how to handle that. So I just pretended I was having orgasms while he turned my cervix to mincemeat. I was stuck in the retroactively absurd position that many women find themselves in at that age, where they accept pain and mistreatment in order to avoid hurting the feelings of the person inflicting it. It also really made me sour on the thought of having sex with him for the rest of my life. On top of that, our some misguided sense of feminism, he also decided that he would never objectify me at all. So every compliment would be about my personality or achievements. In theory, this sounds great. But when I spent an hour getting ready, had zippered myself into a bombshell dress, and actually put makeup on, getting a, "Oh, you have such a beautiful mind," response fucked with my self-esteem a lot. I was convinced he thought I was ugly but was too kind to say anything. A classmate, who, on the first day of class, stopped when he saw me and gave me a very obvious appreciative once-over. Dude sat next to me for the rest of term, blatantly flirting with me and telling me I was pretty. Me, still primly trying to keep things going with boyfriend because I loved him, started feeling horribly torn. It was extremely hard to ignore someone who was so blatantly attracted to me, but I managed it for about 5 months. Then boyfriend went back to his hometown for winter break. He spent the entire month going to parties and hanging out with his friends. We talked every day, but it was mostly him telling me about how much fun he was having. All of my friends, both old and new, had left the city for the holidays, whether it was for vacations or back home, and I was incredibly lonely and depressed. Sometime near the end of break, flirty classmate discovered that I had been alone all winter break and started inviting me to hang out with him every day. I was ecstatic with the attention, but still kept it to just friends' hangouts and basically avoided touching him. Boyfriend, by this point, had started looking at classmate with suspicion. Boyfriend came back from winter break, jealous and suspicious. He stayed over one night and questioned me at length about it. I told him truthfully that I hadn't done anything with classmate, and while I liked him, boyfriend was boyfriend and he was all I needed. I got ready to go to class and left boyfriend in my room to let himself out when he was ready. As I was leaving, I had a sudden tickle of intuition. Turning around, I went to the kitchen, made boyfriend some breakfast, and brought it back up to my room on the pretext of surprising him. I opened the door to find him going through my diary. Cue screaming fight. He wanted to make sure I hadn't done anything. I was enraged that he had invaded my privacy. At the point, I took my writing really seriously, and my diary was extremely important to me. I was also enraged because I had been so careful to be a proper girlfriend and not cheat or do anything inappropriate with classmate, even though the temptation was strong. I couldn't avoid classmate entirely. We were in the same class and were grouped together for a big term project prior to winter break. I stormed out and went to class. Classmate was immediately aware that something was up and cornered me to figure it out. Angry with boyfriend, I confessed everything. Classmate asked if I liked him. I nodded. Classmate kissed me and I kissed him back. It went downhill from there. Classmate really was an asshole, but he was average in bed, which unfortunately made him leagues better than boyfriend, who was terrible. He also fed me all the attention that I'd been craving from boyfriend and had not gotten. I couldn't figure out how to end it with boyfriend because I still loved him and I was still an insecure, scared 18-year-old who had no communication skills. Boyfriend ended up finding out within a month or so because he went into my email account and read all my chat logs. When I went to apologize to him, he slapped me across the face and told me that losing my mother as a kid had fucked fucked me up too much to deserve anyone's love. So, yeah, not sure if I didn't dodge a bullet there. Not happy with my own behavior, but I'm not sure how else things could have played out given how insecure and terrible at communicating I was. I haven't cheated since, and it's been 10 years.